I never thought I'd do a video based on another channel, so who knows how this is going to go down. So if you've been around YouTube since around 2012, maybe through 2016, then chances are you would know who 7Webheads is. And for those who weren't there back when he was still relevant, or if you don't remember him at all, well, for all intents and purposes, he was pretty much the go-to guy in terms of Spider-Man news, whether it be for comics, movies, video games, pretty much anything related to Spider-Man in general. And back in the day, 7Webheads was relatively big within the comic book community. And why I mentioned 2012 through 2016 in particular was because around 2016 he mysteriously vanished from YouTube and didn't post for a total of 3 years. Which led into many fans making countless videos surrounding his disappearance and theorising on where 7Webheads was. And some dedicated fans went as far as to make their own version of 7Webheads as somewhat of a tribute channel. And if you look back on some of his older videos, then it is pretty clear to me on as to why he still has this loyal fan base, and that's because to me at least I did feel that he was relatively unique, he was down to earth, and he covered pretty much anything in relation to Spider-Man. And even after his sudden disappearance, I was still hoping that he was safe and that he was doing new things. But recently it has came to light in that 7Webheads did sell the channel to another company. The company in question being the Fandom Wire, in which I am aware that they are pretty big in terms of the Facebook landscape. And essentially Fandom Wire is a company that mostly covers pop culture news, as well as doing some reviews and even some trailer breakdowns. So in other words, they're pretty much in the same caliber as the Comic Book Cast, HR Entertainment, What Culture, and to some extent Watch Mojo. Now, as a fan of 7Webheads myself, this is a lot to take in, and first and foremost, I do respect his decision into retiring from YouTube and moving on into doing new things, and as much as I would love to see him come back down the road, I do understand that YouTube can be somewhat of a hurdle. And while I am aware that it was 7Webheads' choice to sell the channel to Fandom Wire, the idea of a company taking on a channel from someone else who've spent years on building it up himself just doesn't really sit right with me. And yeah, one would say that maybe I'm a bit jealous because they have more subscribers than I do from the get-go, but personally I would rather build my own audience as opposed of taking someone else's. And within a 1 hour live stream, they only took the first 5 minutes to really address the name change and what really happened to 7Webheads. And at one point, one of them went as far as to say that they didn't think anyone would notice that 7Webheads was gone, given that it has been 3 years since his disappearance. And while I want to give them the benefit of the doubt here and assume that they don't mean anything bad about it, but it did come across as a little insulting. Because like I previously mentioned, after a few years of 7Webheads stopped doing videos, people were still curious on where he was at and wanted him to come back. Now, I'm sure that everyone in Fandom Wire are nice people and want to do good by making new content for their new fan base, but to me, a big company such as them should have just made their own channel and left 7Webheads alone. Because so far, a lot of people seem to resent Fandom Wire purely because they bought 7Webheads' channel, not to mention that they don't really bring much new in terms of content. And given that they're so big on Facebook, they could have just easily made their own channel and then just promoted it through Facebook, and then they probably would have had just about the same amount of subscribers as they do now. But apparently that's what they do, and that they just tend to buy off people's channels among other social platforms just to expand their own company. And the only reason why I have yet to unsubscribe from Fandom Wire is because I want to see what they have in store, but unless they bring something new to the table in some way, shape or form, then there's no reason for me to be subscribed to them anymore. Especially when there are other channels that are much better in terms of quality as well as personality. And as for 7Webheads, I just want to say that you are an absolute legend, and I do still enjoy your content to this very day and looking back on what you once made. And while the channel is now a shell of its former self, I still want to say that the legacy of 7Webheads will still remain intact for years to come. So are you still a little bummed out in that 7Webheads had officially retired from YouTube, and what do you think of Fandom Wire taking on the channel moving forward? Do you think you're going to be sticking around, or do you think that you're going to unsubscribe in the long run? Comment below and share some thoughts. And as always, thank you guys for watching this video. Please like and subscribe. Please don't send hate over to Fandom Wire and try and give them the benefit of the doubt. Take care and have a good one.